Really?
That's all right. Where's, how do I shut that off?
Pause.
That's what I'm trying to-
Up there on the top is the pause button.
So here,
No,
yeah,
no.
All right, it's Tuesday, June 27th, Building and Planning Committee, special meeting, the Board of Directors. Call it to order at 10 o'clock straight up. In regards to the agenda, we want to make one change. We want to move item 9 under project update to item 1. So that Mr. Ryan can speak first because he's got to be in Visalia for a meeting. Beyond that, do we have any other changes to the
Do you
agenda?
need a motion for that change?
I don't know that we did, Gene.
If you do, I'll make.
yeah, we will.
Okay, motion, second.
Second.
Thank you, Ross. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Public comment? Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to be heard at this time on matters? Nope,
That's our public.
okay, we have no one on screen. Let's move forward. Approval of minutes from the May 30th meeting. Anyone review them or have any comments or changes that needed to be made on pages 2 through 4?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes presented.
Thank you, James. Have a second?
Well, second.
Thank you, Rob. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Project update. Mr. Ryan.
Thank you. I'm going to attempt anyway to share my screen so that you can see. Hopefully that will-
So, yeah, just as Paulie's doing that, as a preliminary, the seismic project of the hospital building, the acute care, that is both an SPC and NPC upgrade of that building. SPC being structural and NPC being non-structural performance categories, which are systems, piping, sprinklers, et cetera. Our newer buildings are SPC compliant, but they lack a few things to be NPC compliant. And all along, I have budgeted some dollars towards that, but that is a separate submittal to Oshpod HCI from our master project or the upgrade of the acute care building. So this is something that we have to do. And if you read the thing that I presented, I gave the dates of when we have to have our plan in, when we have to have latest date for application of drawings and that. We have to pull the building permit. And we have a lot of years, but the first piece of it, which is what our plan will be, is coming up fairly soon. And that's why we want to kind of address that. And Michael's done a number of these for other facilities. And so he's going to kind of give you a rough idea of what we're looking for.
Real quick before we start, Mark, just a quick question. The work we're doing on the acute building here for that project, is that going to address the NPCs as well?
It
Or,
will partially, yes,
okay, so,
Up through NPC 4, right?
correct.
okay, so then
Okay.
5, that'll be some extra.
Can I ask you a question since you're here?
Yes,
Okay. Now, we pay for room and board and transportation, right? What I'm getting at is, when we got a smaller thing, can we access what we're paying you to give us for somebody else to look at for a small job? You know what I'm talking about?
Well, we do have a different architect doing some small projects.
Yes.
Okay, but it doesn't have access to what we're paid for already, $1.3 million or whatever it is.
Most of those wouldn't include work that Mike's working on.
So we can't have access to what he has worked on. Although we
We have
paid $1.3 million.
We have access to it, yes.
Okay, so if we have access, he has access. What I'm getting at, all these little jobs that you're coming down here for is ridiculous.
well, we tried to combine the projects. In other words, times that we're coming down, we try to combine that with 2 or 3 other things, like today's discussion is combined with an evaluation. But that being said, you can differentiate between planning work and design work and construction documents if you like. That's at the pleasure of the hospital. We do work with some clients that we do primarily medical planning or master planning, and they retain other architects to do the design.
Well, it's just that smaller jobs come up. And you know, paying for room and board and transportation for something that's sort of ridiculous.
Well, again, we don't always, Michael doesn't come down that often. And so a lot of times we have Zoom calls with him or whatever, or, you know, directly while he's up there. So we don't incur travel costs and those kinds of things.
Most of our small projects, they don't have to come down to even look at.
Right.
It's all done
But
via-
but I wanted to know that we have access to what we paid.
Yes,
We paid $1.3 million.
yeah,
So we should be able to look at it and have one of our other contractors use the dimensions because we paid for it, right?
you say use the dimensions, yes. I mean, there'll be certain caveats in terms of their using, because usually they want electronic drawings, like CAD drawings. So it's fair, as long as they sign a disclaimer, not holding us responsible, if they change something that we're not responsible for.
Okay, cool.
We don't have a
All right.
problem.
So we have some use.
There seems to be some issue either with my internet. Is there an internet here that's faster than my phone? Because there's too much lag between what I'm showing.
Yeah, we got Austin there.
You could probably, can we,
Want me to have her come?
yeah, let's have her do this. Yeah. What we might be able to do is have you send the presentation to us.
I can begin, with your permission, I'll begin the conversation.
Yeah.
And then there are some pictures here, but I don't know that that's necessarily that important.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think everybody knows that there's SB 1953, the Seismic Safety Act, has two components: SPC, structural performance category, and NPC, non-structural performance category. The structural performance category is a building shell. That's to make sure the building doesn't fall around you in the event of earthquake, or maintains operation after a predictable earthquake. The NPC, which is what we're talking about today, is a non-structural performance category. So that's really building contents. So that's making sure that the building can be exited safely and it can be, at least portions of it, used. There are actually 5 categories of NPC. We'll be talking about them today. NPC 1 is a building that in the event of a predictable earthquake, you would not be able to use the building or even exit it. So you had to be NPC 2 prior to 2030. Prior to 2008, I guess. But that was completed. The work that was required for that was completed some time ago, and you're an NPC 2 across the campus, the entire campus. So really what you're looking at is getting from NPC 2 to NPC 3, 4, and 5. Once you reach NPC 5, you're good beyond 2030. In other words, a hospital can be used beyond 2030. From a structural performance category, that's the building shell frame. You're an SPC 2 in the original hospital building, and all of your newer buildings, the dietary building, surgery building, skilled nursing facility, those are all SPC 4s, meaning that structurally they're good to go. There's no structural work that has to do with the building envelope or the building shell. The original hospital building here is an SPC 2. And the plan of the seismic retrofit is to take that to an SPC 4D, which will allow you to use it beyond 2030. So that's the structural retrofit. Not a whole lot to discuss since you're doing the structural retrofit of the original hospital. There's not a lot to discuss on the SPC side because you're already taking care of that. So really today's discussion is on the NPC side. So, sorry, I don't have access to but I'll try to do my best to explain this.
But she's gonna get you a Thor account, a
Okay,
guest account,
Then
and you'll be able to log into
you can log
that,
into
and
that.
then you'll be able to.
okay. I can probably explain a lot of this, and then we'll just hope. Yeah. So NPC 3 is all this means that basically your critical care areas are brought up to a level of service or a level that you can expect those in a predictable event to remain in operation. There's no guarantee on any of this, but in a predictable event, you can expect that those would stay in operation. That's NPC 3. NPC 4 is really the remainder of the hospital. And there is a nuance here of NPC 4D. So 4D was put in place for those hospitals that, let's say that you were trying to bring your original hospital building up. And you said, well, I can't, bring it the whole hospital to NPC 4D, upgrading all the content, all the piping, all the mechanical systems. enormously expensive. What we're gonna do is we're gonna break out the areas that we believe that we need to stay in operation, to maintain a hospital, of some services of a hospital. And then you as a board and the hospital administration are gonna put together an operational plan to bring those services back online. In your case, you're lucky, because once you do the seismic retrofit, the rest of your hospital, the work that's required to get from an NPC 3 to an NPC 4, NPC 2 or NPC 4 isn't that, in the grand scheme of things, isn't that significant. They're primarily going to be your fire sprinkler systems, which were designed under the code, that have to be evaluated. And there'll be some miscellaneous bracing of some piping or some ductwork, but it's not going to be a holistic re-brace all the systems in the hospital. So we can talk about NPC 4D in some depth. It is a good strategy for those hospitals that are older and trying to piecemeal how they're going to just break out a certain element in their hospital and make it compliant and let the rest go, let the rest, be brought online. But it does bring a lot of oversight from HCI, and then you as a board and you as hospital administration also have to put together what's called operational plans. Here's how we're going to bring everything back, and that's a living document, and it's something that you're responsible for doing. So it could be when the next step is an evaluation of those buildings to verify what I'm saying. But I think what's going to happen is when you evaluate the building, you're going to find there's some sprinkler bracing, there's some miscellaneous bracing of equipment, and some ductwork and piping. But it's, yes.
In '89, that big earthquake down south, I forget the name. We were under construction. We had to stop and go by the new rules. For earthquake.
That's what brought you to the SPC 4.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's, so that actually could be an important factor, because the sprinkler, let's pick on sprinklers
I
for a
know,
second.
that's why.
Yeah, the requirement for bracing for sprinklers changed from the 85 code to the 88 code. And even HCI has accepted this, or HUSPOD, that if a building was built to the 88 code, it needs less evaluation than it does in the 85 code.
We paid 12 million more on $10 million building. Because of that.
Okay, because technically speaking, you're designed to the documents that you're designed to the 85 code, but it sounds like you may have actually
Upgrade, we did.
upgraded
And
beyond
we'll have
that.
we'll have to see if we can find the documentation of that.
Find the documentation, particularly the fire sprinkler drawings to. So in terms of an NPC, the next steps are to perform an evaluation of the building. I would, at this point, suggest that rather than bringing in engineers, and Bob and I have talked about this, I think the biggest issue is going to be pipe support, some mechanical. I don't think there's going to be a lot of that, but there's going to be some of it. And then the sprinkler systems. So suggestion would be bring in a qualified sprinkler subcontractor who knows the bracing requirements for sprinklers. Have them participate in the review of the building, because they're going to know better than anyone else whether or not there's an end of line restraint or a mid-span restraint or whatever it is that isn't there with brace. I would do the same with building systems. The last project we did this, we actually brought in someone from Mason West, which is a company that specializes in, yes.
But if it were certified, the new 88, why would we even need to look at it? Because the county looked at it before we put it in place.
Relative to the sprinkler system, there's an exception in SB 1953 that says that projects not built to the 1993 code for sprinkler systems are deemed potentially non-compliant. It was in 93, there was some pretty significant changes made to sprinkler design and restraints that if it had been built, let's say in 96 to the 93 code, we would be saying you're probably categorically already exempt from the review.
But we'll find, we should be able to find the records, right?
Well, we're
Yeah.
just looking, yeah.
So I would suggest bringing in someone, we brought in like I said, the last project we did like this, we brought in a company called Mason West, and they specialize in seismic anchorage of the bits and pieces, the things that you would brace into the ceiling. And again, it's the same idea. You're the people that would have to design the system. You would know what the difficulties are, so you do the evaluation. We also had a structural engineer look at miscellaneous, but it was relatively minor, and then we spearheaded it in terms of the evaluation. That usually takes a month or two, maybe 3 to kind of pull off the full evaluation. Then there's a presentation that comes back to this entity, the administration of the board, says, here were the findings of that NPC evaluation. At this point, it's time to make a decision as to whether or not you want to, if it's sizable and you want to go down the NPC 4D route and carve out sections, or do we think that this is small enough in terms of scope that we want to go down the road of full NPC compliance and just say those buildings are relatively minor in terms of their improvements. We're going to plan to retrofit those before 2020. There are some milestones. 2030, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're late already.
Time machine.
Time is short.
Now, when you did the original plans, did you know about this stuff? Is this all brand new on top of the original plans?
The original
It's only a
plan,
year ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
The original plans were to bring the original hospital building into seismic compliance. Yes, we knew that there was a valuation of the remainder of the hospital building that needed to be completed. We brought that up several times, but we did not include that because our focus was on the non-compliant building, the building that frankly can't go beyond 2030.
It may be cheaper to tear the damn thing down.
The original hospital building.
Yeah, and just use the other building, period,
Well,
because we're not using the whole.
there are California Administrative Code, Title 22, and California Building Code describe certain services that you have to have in order to be a hospital. And a good number of ththose services are located in the regional hospital building, unfortunately. Unfortunately, some of the services, like the surgery building, technically speaking, as a rural critical access hospital, if you have an arrangement with a hospital, you don't have to provide surgery, but you do have to provide your medical beds. You still have to provide laboratory services. You still have to provide your ED.
It would all fit in a new building,
Which new building? Surgery building?
skilled nursing.
Skilled nursing. Skilled nursing building isn't designed to the same standards as a
Lower
Oshkosh
standard.
one.
Okay.
It's actually a different categorized difference in Oshkosh 2 building. I'm not disagreeing with your points. I'm just, unfortunately, the more you work in the state, the more these
Yeah,
roadblocks.
if the skilled nursing building were built to that criteria, we could do that.
Do we have to stay?
We wanted to put a general site building.
Can we get out of California?
That was our problem. couldn't
We can all
do it.
move.
You'd have to run your utilities from the type
I
of
have-
building through a type.
I have my own
two
issues
to
with the
type
state of
of-
California, but we won't
So
go into
we'd
that.
have to reroute everything outside. That was why we didn't give it too much.
Okay.
Nice, simple, logical project became infeasible.
Okay. So so some deadlines. Really quickly, there are a few mandated deadlines that are coming up. The first one, and I didn't talk about NPC 5, and I will that in a minute. The first one is January 1st of 2024, so about 6 months from now. The hospital needs to submit what their plan is for ultimate correction of the SBC and NPC. Your SBC is going to be pretty straightforward. You've got a project already in Oshkosh or in HCI for approval. That's pretty straightforward. But you will have to characterize how you plan on addressing the NPC side in terms of evaluation and completion of that work. Mainly what they're looking for is to make sure that you're aware of the issues, you're aware of the scope of work, and that you have a plan, or the board has committed to doing one thing or the other, either closing the building by 2030 or doing the necessary work to bring it to NPC 4 or NPC 4D. That's really what they're looking for. By January 1st of 2026, there's another milestone, which means that milestone is you have to have the construction documents submitted to HCI for that NPC or SBC improvements. And the reason for that is they want to make sure that people are following through on their commitments and not waiting till August 1st of 2029 and saying, oh, we do plan on doing this, but we can't quite get to it yet. So what they're trying to do is hold people's feet to the fire a little bit of making sure that people are aware incrementally that these are the requirements and that there's deadlines for that. And then by 2028, there is a requirement to pull building permit for the NPC, SPC, all, anything that hasn't been done. So what's the downside of not doing this? Well, you all probably know that better than I do, but there is one thing I will tell you, that if you start missing these deadlines, there will come a point where they will no longer issue a permit unless it is a imminent life safety or equipment replacement. So, we have questions about if they don't let us pull a permit, what does that really mean? Well, it means that, if you want to make an improvement to your hospital or a modification or change, they're gonna say, you haven't complied with the requirements to make this a seismically seismically compliant building, therefore we're not gonna issue permits anymore.
Do they make exceptions? We're in a non-earthquake prone area. We're not nearly. Was going over any or even gas winter. We're up here, we're supposed to be safe.
There are levels of predictable earthquake in terms of seismic activity. And you are judged by the area that you're in terms of the amount.
So they do that automatically.
Yeah, so there's zones, there's earthquake zones here. And so ones that are less prevalent to severe earthquakes, there's the requirements for how rigid the structure, how seismically resistive the structure is, are less than, let's say, in downtown Los Angeles. But they don't, state of California doesn't say, I don't know of a single hospital that said, no, you're exempt because there is no risk of earthquakes.
Yeah, the rules apply to all hospitals in California. There's efforts, as I've mentioned many times, that are underway to try to change that. Obviously, because we have many hospitals, especially small rural hospitals up in Northern California and so forth, that are nowhere near the fault lines and so forth. And therefore they're saying, why should they have to comply with those that are in high risk, earthquake zones? So those battles are still going on.
Yeah.
So.
But as far as sprinkler systems, that's statewide.
That's statewide.
Yeah.
All these requirements, everything I've been mentioning right now is statewide. Any acute care hospital in the state of California have to honor these requirements. I didn't mention NPC 5. So the best way to describe NPC 5 is that HCI or OSHPD looks at your hospitals as an island of security when there's an earthquake, right? So people come here after an earthquake or a natural disaster. And the goal of NPC 5 is to give the local utility services time to bring those services to you so that you can remain in operation for at least 72 hours if the water main breaks, if the sewer main breaks, if the electrical lines all go down, that for 72 hours you can stand as an island and be self-sufficient. Now,
We already do that, aren't we?
That's what we're working right now.
Yeah.
Generator. Yeah.
you're pretty close. The three
Water.
things you have to have are emergency power and fuel. You're working on that now. You have to have 72 hours of fuel, and I think you already have that. You have a huge leg up on most hospitals. You have a sewer treatment plant here. That's huge. So that really brings, so sewer, electrical, fuel, sewer, water. So 72 hours of water is the big question. Most of the facilities that we're working with are going to tanks, either above ground or underground tanks.
Would that tank across the street qualify? Because we could come direct from that.
Any tank that is, I don't know if it technically has to be on the property. That's a good question.
It's adjacent right across the street.
Yes.
But
I wanted to bring up another.
It's not potable, but it could be made potable.
So I wanted to bring up another suggestion, because in order to do the water, and this is something that obviously, Bob and his crew are gonna have to work with you all on. You have to have an emergency operation plan. Say in the event of an earthquake, we're not gonna run all the water. There's gonna be a conservation plan.
Yeah, we have that. We've already approved that.
Yeah.
So
So this is, which allocates how much water you need. And then you just have to say, well, how are we gonna get 72 hours of water? However, an interesting conversation. So several years ago, we were working with Mayor's Memorial Hospital and on their water, emergency water. And they're in the Fall River Valley. There's water pretty close by. So we said, what about maybe drilling a well? So we talked to H guy about that. So no, I don't think so. Logistics problems of wells and fracking all that and fracturing. And so they didn't go down. They've actually put in a tank. So they had, HCI had a seminar just, maybe a week ago, right, Bob? And they said, well, here's an idea for your water supply. Maybe you should sink a well. And there's a lot to be said for that. I think what's happened is they kind of realized that your well is probably more stable than your tank is. And it's a more constant source of water, and it's a replenishable source, because what's happening, and this is happening across the states, is there's a caveat in the code that says you have to have 72 hours of water, but you have to have a minimum of X number of gallons, and then they'll allow you to refill, have a supplier come in and refill, which is great, except for if you have an earthquake, can you really depend on that supplier getting to your hospital?
Not at all.
Unless it's local.
It's so with that idea, there is some thought, and Bob and I were just chatting about this a couple days ago, of maybe looking at the idea of a well here. It'd probably be cheaper than trying to do 15 or 20,000 gallons of potable water that has to be kept potable. And frankly, it's a whole lot, I think it's probably more predictable that, I don't know what your groundwater here is, groundwater table, but it's probably pretty good.
57
Yeah.
to 65 feet down.
Yeah, exactly. It's
That
pretty
we take
good.
it well.
We wouldn't have to pay the Cal water. Could we?
We don't now.
Yeah,
It's Kissix. We go through Kissix.
Well,
Yeah.
the Cal water's managing it
Yeah.
and charging.
No,
Yeah.
they're not doing the charging. Erskine Creek.
Oh,
Water-
Erskine Creek took it over.
Right.
Okay.
Erskine Creek is taken over. Kissing Water is contracts with,
But could we
Erskine
use
to
that
do the
water
building,
for the
and
hospital? all the
some of the
time?
well work with Cal Water.
well, there's, that becomes the rub, because there is a water quality issue, but it's also, I know that there's an issue of sinking wells in this area too. So the most predictable way is to say this is our emergency water supply for a hospital, and therefore any objections to sinking a well here, we're not draining the aquifer. That's not the plan. We're trying to make sure we have potable water necessary to maintain critical operations of the hospital when it's needed. So I think it'd be hard to object too strenuously to that position. Now, it is a good question. Now, we've got this well, we've got a pump, and why not use it for irrigation? Why not use it for,
Whatever. Yeah,
that is all a question for you. I don't think there's any objection from the state. I don't think HCAT is gonna say, well, you can't use that well for something else. It's just a question of whether your logistics and getting that approved.
and I would assume, since Kissing Water has the wells here that supply this community, that they have the water rights of this area, and getting Scott Kissing to agree to the hospital having a well would be a moot point. It wouldn't be Cal Water's decision.
He actually is the one that owns the tank across the street.
Yes.
Okay.
And he would just let us, I know Scott.
Oh, he's told us, he said, you can have the water,
Yeah, we can have it through. So,
but
Yeah.
not potable.
Now,
Yeah.
because you asked about what about using the tank across the street. I can tell you that the tank across the street, the likelihood of HCI accepting that tank and size, they'll say, well, how was it anchored? How was it braced? How was it constructed? How was it filtered? Da, da, da. And by the time you get through the list of questions, you'll say, this is ridiculous.
No, my recommendation would be that when we get to that point of the NBC 5 is that we get approvals and we sink a well.
Yeah.
Whether we utilize the water daily or whether we have it as backup, it'll have to have a treatment facility attached to it as far as treating it to be potable. But other than that, and we already do testing of all of our water systems right at the treatment plant. So it's a very simple matter of adding some minor testing of that water to show proof that it's viable.
So just a question on the water quality, because we have, the septic pits and whatnot all around the campus. Don't we run into a problem with, we're putting all the waste in the ground? Can
No.
we drill a well on this site?
Yes, well, because here's the thing, all of our leach pits are located under the front parking lot at that far end. And I send reports to the State Water Board quarterly showing the flume from those and how they transfer down towards the lake and how far they go. That's a requirement that I have to do every quarter. And so all of that water goes that direction.
So as long as we're upstream, we
And
should
we
be
put
okay.
the well over here, we're fine.
Okay. All
And
right.
there would certainly be some testing that would have to be done, and there's some water quality test. It's a really good point. And there's usually a distance from any sort of septic system that a well has to be in order to not contaminate the well. And there would have to be filtration on it, even if it's from the well. If you had good water, there'd still have to be a filtration system, another, probably even
Chlorination more.
yeah, maybe chlorination and maybe an ultraviolet. But
This water system. It comes from Weldon. Over to the state. Water and Weldon. Here. New York. So, could we tap into that line that's coming from there on his wall? Have a tank here that would hold 72 hours.
the difficulty, I think, I'm not saying yes or no, I have no idea, but I would just gonna pose, I'm gonna put on my H guy hat. How was the underground utilities put in? What are they made of? How are they connected? How do I make sure that those pipes are
It's
gonna
only
be
about
there?
15 years old, so
Yeah.
it should be.
But under what jurisdiction were they installed? And
Yeah,
all of,
okay.
you can see how this all unfolds. And you know, we like to think of H guy being just, you know, the most, you know, oversight people we know. But, you know, they just take their mission extremely seriously, which is, you know, the event of an earthquake, we can't, no one can guarantee the hospital is gonna be in operation, but we wanna give you your best shot. And that's why they spend so much time overseeing and looking at construction documents and looking at construction in place, is to give you your best shot.
We didn't do a very good job.
They can say.
Yeah.
Chris, that's right.
Yeah, I kind of, it's an interesting story when the older part of the hospital is where they're moving into. But I was told by H guy that was minor issues in the grand scheme of things. But anyways, that's why they say best shot.
There are no guarantees.
Thank you.
Is, yes. So I can make this presentation, and I apologize for some reason, my computer just doesn't seem to have enough bandwidth to present it here, but I'll make this presentation available. And then anybody can take a look at it, happy to answer any questions. Greenbelt will be happy to participate in this evaluation, or as you say, if there's someone else that you think you'd rather have participate. we have no
No,
issue with that.
I'm just thinking some of the smaller stuff that I see us paying invoice for, it's just.
Oh, yeah, no.
So what we've asked Michael, what we're asking Michael to do is to give us a proposal.
No, I see, I understand.
Yeah.
You have the proposal,
We do not,
No,
we
no.
do not. I want to have this conversation and make sure that we're not going through an NPC 4D. And maybe this isn't the time to answer that question, maybe you can think about it. But I would just be given your building, not the original hospital building, which is being retrofitted, but the rest of the building, given the shape it's in when it was built. I personally think NPC 4D doesn't benefit you very much. And it comes at some personal risk to the board, because you're taking responsibility for allocating areas of your hospital that will or will not be compliant. That being said, when the evaluation is done, the NPC evaluation is done, that's also your opportunity to say, hey, this looks pretty straightforward, there's no reason to go down NPC 4D, or you might say, yeah, we identified some areas right over here, and it's primarily a space we're not gonna use, it's pretty big. Let's go down the road of NPC 4D and carve off that area, but at this point, I can't tell you.
well, if we did it, could we do it while he's still the director, if there's any gamble?
You
Got
can
big
do it
goals.
whenever you, I don't know when your term expires. but,
Got about 6 months to pull this off.
Well, I'll put this by January 1st, 2024, you have to go to H guy and tell them what to do. That's why we focused on seeing me get in front of you all today. It seems like 6 months is a long time, but when it comes to this kind of evaluation and decision making, it's not a long time at all.
So the costs of this, have they been included in the estimates we've gotten for our other work or not?
No,
Okay,
not the bid that was done by the firm out of LA.
okay.
In some of my earlier rough drafts, I had plugged some dollars into the NBC upgrades of the other buildings.
You did, okay.
Just as a way of us.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I would advise, and I unfortunately have to run, but I would advise that there's some way to document that the sprinkler systems were installed to an 88 code versus an 85 code. That would reduce what you have to evaluate. Not only would it make potential retrofit easier, but there's actually, HCI has actually published what you have to look at if you're under the 88 code and it's less than the 85.
Yeah, I'll do
Find that out.
I'll do all the research that I can. I have boxes and boxes of documentations and storage.
Doesn't the county have that you could just pull up?
No, there's nothing went
It's not
through
a
the
county
county or all.
All went to the state.
It all went through HGI and
And they might, I'm not saying they don't, but they would be the people who would have.
Well, you'd think they would have it because
They're the ones shoving everything else down our.
well, there's a couple ways you might find it. One is you might find it on the documents, but I suspect if it came up during construction, there would have been. The most likely scenario is the fire sprinkler systems are probably a deferred approval.
Yes,
And so the deferred approval, if you can find them, should say what
They were built.
edition of the California Building Code they were designed to.
so, yeah, I've got a lot of boxes to go through.
Yeah, good luck. Oh, the other option is if you know who did the work, maybe they can tell you.
That's on the drawings.
Okay.
So that's another
That's
option.
another
We can follow that.
Yeah, we went to another hospital, it was called Marquee Fire, they've been doing this work at the hospital for like 30 years, so. What did you do in 1985? They pull up the records, they show us exactly what they did.
Yeah, so it's very possible that we might be able to prove that. Okay. All right.
so whenever you send that, are you gonna have proposal or is it something that takes longer? You just tell us what we need to do.
I would, because the proposal, what I would recommend is rather than bring engineers here, would be to reach out to some of the local vendors. I've already gotten some fire sprinkler, ideas from Bob. I'd like to put those people together, and then once we have their numbers, then I can write a full proposal. I have a pretty good understanding of what my time would be in terms of.
Is it a rough idea, like 500,000 or 1,000,000 or 100,000? I just, I mean,
Real rough?
totally rough.
Real rough, I think it's under 100,000 certainly,
Okay.
for the evaluation. Yeah, I think it's under 100,000. We just have to see what the other people want.
Yeah.
But please don't hold me to that. I would like to say it's 10,000, but it won't be that.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, now, do you drive a Volkswagen, right?
I do not.
40 miles a gallon and you get,
I do not drive a Volkswagen,
I'm joking.
but it's an interesting point because, just so you know, we do try to combine trips to Kern Valley Hospital.
I looked at it, I've looked at it for 3 years, I know, and you do. But questions come up before. Can we use some of the information?
Yeah.
Would be helpful.
Well, and that's why he said it to Visalia. That's another portion of this.
So the answer to your question is, and I'll just repeat it for the board because I've already, these three back here have already heard it. Personally, I or Greenbow are not interested in providing services that someone else can do either better or just as well and cheaper. I mean, it doesn't make any sense for you and it doesn't make any sense for us. We have our area of expertise, and when that makes sense to use us, fine. But again, we do master planning work where that's all we do, just the master planning work.
So basically, whatever's better, you'll try to work with us.
Well, and I approached Michael on the building down the street. He just says, no.
Yeah,
Somebody.
yeah.
Yeah, again. If you have expertise in a certain area, there are times when that makes you a good fit. When somebody else has just the same expertise and they're either cheaper or more convenient.
Yeah, and on the boiler project, we're gonna talk about it. But I talked with him and he said, we're gonna have to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch, whereas Red Ink Architects did the last set of boilers, so
Right.
it's a cut and paste for them. So
Okay, well,
Just a quick,
he answered my question.
as we've done these other projects with the boilers and water heaters and those kinds of things, we addressed acreage with those things. So are we, in essence, correcting NPC issues as we go along with those things?
Potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, so work that's been done subsequent to, I would say subsequent certainly from 1998. If you've done the work, it's deemed compliant.
Yeah, I'm just talking about stuff that we've done literally in the last couple of years.
Sure,
Well, then,
should all be
It's all
compliant.
compliant.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
compliant.
good.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bob. Nash.
All right, yes, so master plan, as I stated in the deal, is back in odd plan review, third go around. And so we're waiting to see how many comments come out of this next go around. That's the third plan review, and Michael believes that there will probably be 4. The 4th one will just be minor clarifications. And so it's been in HCI for several weeks. So that's where we're at on the master plan.
Okay.
On the SBC material testing, that work is done and complete. The reports are into OSHPD. From the structural engineer, OSHPD has accepted them. And this is the criteria verifying that the 4D seismic upgrade works. So they require destructive testing and actual testing of rebar and cement block foundations and everything. So that is all done. Everything came in at lower values or higher values than the structural engineer had used in his preliminary work. So he feels that everything is, all of his design work that he had done to date is going to be just fine, because everything tested at or above the expected levels. So that's on the 4D testing. The only thing I'm doing is right now is I'm arguing with them out of a final $1,440 invoice that I don't believe we'll. So
I should have given that to me while I was here.
yeah. Okay, so the new administration building, we should be submitting those plans for suites B and C to the county very shortly. I've been contacting the architect. He's pushing the subs. I actually called up one of the engineers and said, you know, come on, you got to get this done for me. We've got to get this submitted to the county. So those should be submitted shortly to do the suite B and C, where it was the one big auditorium where the scope of work is larger than I can take on in-house.
Within the $25,000 limit.
Yeah, and so where we're at on the suite A is all the data's been pulled. All of the walls have been textured, all the walls are painted, the carpet has been picked up, and we're gonna be starting to lay the carpet next week. So suite A
So
will be
we'll
done.
be able to use each suite as we finish them.
Yes,
Cool.
yeah, so we are nearing completion on suite A, and then we're gonna move down to suite D, which is where the doctor used to be.
Is there a notice of occupancy? Do you have to go through anything like that before you can put people in?
Nope, because we are not pulling a permit, because none of the work we're doing is required to be permitted. So paint on the walls, carpet on the floor does not require a permit.
B and C will.
B and C
A
will,
does not,
yes.
A and D.
Did we were going to, did we ever see who owns that lot next door?
Yes, we did. I looked it up.
How much is
It's a lady, but well, I don't know that I gave you that information. Yeah, I looked up, it's a lady who lives down in the LA area.
Oh, I remember you talking to me about it.
Yes, right.
So you got-
So, but that's the lot next to it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, the lot across the street. Sold for $8,000 last year.
Cross,
Across Wood Street. Oh, I'm out of the corner, you mean?
next,
Yeah,
next to the
auto.
auto shop. Okay,
So.
yeah, I don't
mean,
figure it's worth a whole lot.
But it would be so good to have.
Yeah.
If we have septic issue, we could throw a
Right.
septic in there.
Yeah.
Or-
So I
Build it.
will re-pull up that information. I did look up and got her name and all of that stuff.
I put a storage bowl in there. There's a lot of uses. that
A
we
lot of
could have
uses
for
it
it.
could be used for, yes. All right, so that's the status on the administration building. The emergency generator, as you can see, it's started. There's nobody working today, but they should be here later this week to start trenching. It's gonna come down right through that whole ER area where you see all the fences. Hold up on the electrical contractors, subcontractor doing trenching, so. We have a meeting, the general contractor and the architect, Eric, and myself have a meeting every Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock where we review everything. Right now, we're going through some RFIs, which are requests for information. All the submittals from the subs on what they're supplying are coming through. We're still lacking about 3 submittals. And so the contractor's hounding his subs to get the submittals in, so we can get the submittals approved. And so we've started the work. All the site demolition is done. The concrete's been cut and removed. So the next step is we're gonna get the trench down through, get the conduits in, get the trench backfilled, and get that re-poured so that we can open up our area outside of ER. Then we'll continue with the foundation for the generator and some of those issues as we go along.
We still have to remove that foundation for the.
Yes, we do have one additional cost, and that is we found when we saw cut and dug down. Once upon a time, now CT goes this way right now. Okay, once upon a time, CT was mounted this way. And it was built the same as the lab trailer, in that it has cement block walls coming up. Well, when they removed that CT scan, they simply broke off the top level of the CMU. They bent the rebar over and they poured the concrete for the area. So of course,
I just left it.
and of course, it's from the surface of the concrete to the slab that used to support the trailer is 38 inches, and we need 48 inches. So there's going to be some additional demo costs to taking that out, 4 feet wide. And it's one wall, the full length, 4 feet of the wall coming this way and 4 feet of that foundation. We're going to leave the rest of it.
Jackhammers and backhoes, how do they do that?
They have a jackhammer on a little those skid steers that have the 4 wheels that they're small, and they have a big jackhammer on that, and they just reach down there and they break it out again. They have another one with some jaws. They just pick the concrete out.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just like, I can't believe it. They just thought, oh, we'll just cut it down here and nobody will ever know it's there. And of course, that's right where our trench has to be. And our trench is only a couple of feet from the foundations for the future canopy of the ambulance entrance. So we can't just shift it. Yeah. So anyway, so we do have one added cost. It's coming. I don't have it. So and here's what I discussed with the contractor, with the architect, and that is MD Demolition, which is a firm out of Bakersfield, or American Concrete, they're also called. They do the majority of demolition work in the Bakersfield area, and they are very, very good. I've used them for many, many years myself, and so does almost everybody else. They are the subcontractor to the electrical subcontractor. And so the cheapest thing to do is just to have them remove it on time and material, because then you pay exactly what it costs. Because if we ask them to give us a cost, they're going to unearth it, then they're going to sit around and wait while they put a cost to it, and then they're going to mark that cost up to make sure that they haven't missed anything. And so you end up paying 30% more for the work. So I would just suggest that we just go ahead on time and material just for the removal of that little bit of concrete.
And it's just something we can add on to the existing contract, right?
Yes, yeah, it'll come through as a minor change order through the general contractor. Yeah. All right, so that's where we're at on the emergency generator. Boiler number 2 that we mentioned a few minutes ago, that is in OSHPD plan review. So Red Ink Architects completed the drawings. They were submitted about 2 weeks ago, and they are in plan review. So probably in another 6 weeks or so, we should get it back with comments, and then probably one round of corrections, and then we should get a permit for moving ahead with that. And before too long, I need to work on getting an order placed for the boilers, because there would be a long lead item, kind of like the generator was. The generator was 12 months. So, and all our portions of the generator project are ordered. Transfer switches are ordered. Generator, of course, is ordered. It's actually due here in August. So hopefully we have the foundation ready for it to just set on, which we probably will. Short of finding too many more foundations. All right, patient monitoring equipment replacement. That is very close to being submitted to HCI, OSHPD, for plan review. The architect has sent the drawings to me for my final look through to make sure.
Which architect is doing that work?
Michael. Yeah. And it's a very minor project. They presented us a proposal when we were here for drawing those plans. And so those plans should be submitted very shortly. I just need a few hours to go through and make sure that nothing got missed. And then I'll tell them to go ahead and submit, and they'll be in plan. Laundry doors, the doors and frames are here. I have been so busy. I haven't got the metal studs and the drywall ordered. I hope to get those ordered this week, and we can start on those next week.
We're doing that all in.
We're doing that. It's very minor. We're building like 3 feet of wall and setting a door frame. So it's mine. Anyway, so I've done those myself personally many times. So it's not something we would want to farm out and pay 10 times the cost on. Okay, surgery decontamination room, hand wash sink. It's closely behind the plans for the patient monitoring. So the plans are nearing completion, but the patient monitoring will get submitted to HCI or OSHPD sooner. Probably a few weeks after that will be submitted to surgery decontamination hand wash sink.
That was a result of a finding from a
Yes,
survey.
the laundry doors and the decontamination of the hand wash, yes, for both findings. Yeah. All right, and then we covered 9, which is the NPC of the new buildings. And I don't see it being expensive, because like Michael said, it's more than likely end of line restraints, a few little braces here and there. It's not going to be big.
And by end of line restraints, you mean where the sprinkler head comes out, there's.
Yeah, in other words, like if there were sprinklers in this building, the line there'd be a main over here and there would be a line going across and there will be a sprinkler head every 14 feet. Or depending on walls closer together. And so at the end of that line, there's now a requirement on that end head to have that one seismically restrained so it doesn't float around. Because its support is usually back about 3 or 4 feet. And so that when we say end of line restraints, it's those smaller lines. But it's also the end of the lines on the mains that those have to be additionally braced so that they don't move around. It's not difficult work. It can be a little tight in some locations, but we have very good, we have very good attic spaces in the new buildings, so it's not difficult to get in there to do the work.
We got plenty of attics around too.
Yes, we do. All right, so now, and then the last thing I have on here is there's somebody, and I didn't do the research to find out who the wonderful somebody was, wrote Assembly Bill 1882. Of course, everybody's heard about that one, right? It became an OSHPD PIN notice 75. And all this requirement is, and this is just informational because we're already basically done, that every hospital must post in their lobby a thing next to the license of the hospital that says, this is where we are in our compliance steps of being as SPC and NPC compliant.
It's
we
a
have
little
enough
color gauge.
Yeah,
There's a bunch of color gauges on there.
color gauges.
Little dashboard.
And little arrows, kind of like a speedometer on your car.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do we have enough paper to make all the changes?
maybe not though. We have to order.
We
some
should
more
put a
paper.
monitor in.
So Emily has already created the notice. It has to be submitted to OSHPD for approval. And it was, I am not joking. And so, yes, and then we have to have a floor plan showing the location it is. And then there's 10 entities in the state that we have to update every year by such and such a date of the status of our compliance. And so it's all done. I worked on it some. Emily did the actual thing. It's been sent to the architect. The architect submitted it to OSHPD yesterday. And so it's in review. So this is a biggie. This is costing us probably a couple of $100.
And we don't even have a lobby to put it in.
That's true.
We're just architect have to tell us where to put it.
Well, I didn't think about that.
There was some of
No,
that too.
we show it in our lobby. And because on the bulletin board next to the old gift shop door, there's a
Okay.
bulletin board, and in there is our hospital license and a few other notices.
Our lobby is back open.
Oh, it is.
It is. And so this will be placed next. to the license.
Can we hang it with duct tape?
Yeah.
Have we started?
Or one tag,
remodeling that?
because it's not seismically compliant.
Did you take down the old board members' names and all that yet?
I know we haven't yet. We need to. But anyway, so I had to throw that in here.
I have
because
some
everything
really
else
nice dinner.
costs big dollars and a big pain in the butt. This thing is so minor and ridiculous.
Can we at least get meters though that have a little swivel so we can move the dial?
Well, then we're gonna have to reprint it. We can just turn the dial. Yes.
On any given day, if we need to step it back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, so that is, somebody had put all the work into passing an assembly bill for that.
That's crazy. Someone had too much time out.
Yes. Yeah. All right, well, that's all I have. Other than the other items on here.
So any questions for Bob?
Good on everything.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Catherine?
No, I don't, but it's been very entertaining.
John?
Just wait.
Second,
That's not making goal.
At least you were found entertaining by 3 of the 5, okay? So if you get the gold star, you go on to the next round.
Yeah, that's right.
I have to say, it's been very educational for me.
Yeah, you know, it's, I learn new stuff every day. You know, the complexity of Oshkosh construction, hospital construction boggles the mind. It really does.
Well, my husband's a heavy equipment operator for Edison and he does roads, so with environmentalists and every ologist there is, it's amazing what is amazing.
Just, it's amazing the stuff they can come up with.
Yeah. We went to school for the wrong stuff, people.
I'm still amazed and I've been doing it for over 30 years.
Yeah,
We should, Bob, we should merge Oshkosh with our local that knows what we're doing and where we're at. Oshkosh should not exist.
I don't like to say derogatory things, but I dislike taking stuff through the county immensely because they're not competent.
Uh-oh.
At least the people at Oshkosh are competent.
They've been
Okay.
reasonable.
Yeah,
Reasonable.
yeah. Kern County can be unreasonable for no.
There's
Yeah,
gotta be a better way to work with it.
because I get so frustrated.
All right, section F, invoice review says we have none. So item G, emergency department physician agreement.
We have a physician, Dr. Chris Hall, who we brought on as a locum physician, you know, fill in for when Dr. Newell left. And he's worked out extremely well. And he's great with the patients, the staff really enjoy working with him. And so forth. He and I had a conversation and he agreed that he would like to come on board as one of our contract positions instead of going to the locums, because that saves us a bunch of money. It's like taking someone from the registry and hiring them and paying them at our rates and so forth. So that's in essence what we're trying to do here. Kind of same thing we did with Chris Burrows and so forth. Those two get along extremely well. And so this is a contract to bring him on. There is, in order to get him away from the registry, there's a $30,000 fee that we pay, which is just basically a recruitment fee. It's fixed, it's cheap for physicians. Usually it's up to $40,000-$50,000 somewhere there, because it's usually a percentage of a full year's salary. And so forth. This is actually less than I've paid for some managers to recruit. So, and in my conversation with him, he was willing to pick up half that cost. So, so anyway, I'd like to get permission to go ahead and bring him on. This is it's all consistent with the other physician contracts. We're in the process right now of adjusting some of those rates up. But this is consistent with Borough, it's consistent with Shaw's and these other guys. So,
Tim, I got a question.
Yeah.
What's his professional liability record like? We're furnishing,
it's clear, yeah.
it is
Yeah.
good.
He's good, very good.
How much does it cost for professional liability?
That's all part of our hospital policy with Beta. It's all covered under there.
I know it's covered,
Yeah.
how much is that part of it?
Oh, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell because the bundle.
Well, he adversely affected is what.
No, none at all.
Have you checked it?
Yes, yes. Actually, might improve it in some respects.
does he have any friends?
He actually does.
Well, I mean.
He has
a
another-
couple of them.
Now, just to give you a little background on Chris, was in the military for a long time. He's a Navy SEAL. And so, you know, he and I were chatting one day, and he says, you know, it's really funny. He says, I went from a point where I was, you know, in the military was like as high as I can go. and everybody's looking up to you and all this other stuff. He says, then I decided to go to medical school and now I'm an intern.
You're nothing.
You're nothing. It's like,
Unbelievable.
that was a major adjustment and so forth, but he's got a great sense of humor and stuff like this. And,
I make a motion, we'll approve them.
right,
Thank
and
you,
that
Russ.
goes along with the recruitment fee and so forth, but
And you think he'll split it, or do you?
that's, he told me he would, yeah,
I have a question
yes.
on. In the contract, 10.4.5, it's on page 11.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a typo or not, I just wanted to bring it up. It
Water control unit of the state.
determines the medical director has, or may be placing the health and safety of patients, should that be the physician?
I'll have to ask Scott, this contract came from Scott.
Okay,
It may be just like, yeah, he pulled another contract.
it seemed out of place for what we're trying to do.
I think that this was probably written for a person who was working in that medical director capacity. I'll get Scott to review that. So
Okay.
with that change, if there's a change there, we'll make that change.
Okay,
So,
the other
Yeah, I
question I had,
and we've all been through, even he's been through with his attorneys and they didn't catch that.
okay, well, maybe it's applicable to the medical director, it just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. Good catch.
There was, last Monday, there was an incident here in the ER where the doctor was having trouble getting a patient from the ER to the CAT scan. And demanded that EMS be called because he couldn't get the patient across the trench. Was that this guy?
But to my knowledge, I didn't even hear about that.
I hadn't heard about it either.
You didn't even hear it.
I had a discussion with Judy and her staff. About, alignments of that and whatnot, and we shifted some things to make it better for them, and they've looked at it, they've agreed that it's very doable for the next few weeks. So, but I had not heard that there was an incident.
Yeah, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, it just seemed like, and I don't know who the ER doc was, I don't know who was on.
I'll go back and talk to Judy.
But-
See.
It's
Because
like,
she would have been
God,
involved.
if we've got a doctor who is shooting from the hip like that, and his ego or her ego, whoever it was, is so out of control that they can't come up with a solution to get a patient across a hole
That's,
rather than calling for an ambulance.
yeah, that's not his demeanor. I do have an idea who it might be, but
Okay,
I want to verify that first.
all right.
So,
That kind of really bothered me. I
Yeah.
thought, oh my gosh, what kind of decision-making process is this person using? And should
well,
they
again,
be
a
in
lot of
the
it I think
ER?
has to do with if you've got a critical patient and stuff like that, and you're obviously could be a stroke or something like that, and you need to get a CT done now. And so forth, if they're delayed in getting that in there, I mean, we've had those situations come up before when the unit was down.
Sure.
PM goes on or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, as a matter of fact, we had an issue just this last week where the power was shut off for an hour. And so forth, and everybody's like, oh my God, what do we do? And so the issue was, I had asked Bob to install a line conditioner because we kept the power going in, it was this intermittent interruption with the power coming into the unit. We had enough system in there and it wasn't catching it and so forth. So we went out and bought the line conditioner. So the electricity is cleaned before it goes into the unit period
Huh.
and so forth. So that was out for an hour. And by the time I got to Bob to find out that it was all fixed. Right?
Well, and what we had done was we had contacted radiology and ER and said, we're ready to take it down to make the thing
Cut over.
with the line conditioner. And is it okay? Do you have anything scheduled or anything? And obviously, the emergency stuff is one thing, but we literally had it off for approximately 15 minutes. Yeah, that's right.
But
Took us an hour.
But that, we're trying to do
Start
that to
finish.
keep the equipment from going down.
Yeah.
Those little spikes that would come through the line.
Well, it took out our injector head twice.
Twice, yeah.
Yeah, and it was spikes from Edison.
Well, the thing that bothered me about this incident
Yeah.
was, gosh, we've got an ER doctor who can't come up with an alternative in discussing with his nurses how to get a patient from point A to B on this campus, rather than call an ambulance. And who's gonna pay for it? Is that the hospital's cost? Is that
Like I said,
patient
it's a critical,
costs?
it's a critical
Be a
patient
patient.
and they need to be down there immediately.
What's the
Then
procedure for that?
that would have been okay. I would have been okay with that,
Really can't just carry the
What?
patient?
Well, they don't even have to go that route.
Yeah.
They could go down the hall and around the corner and roll right into CT.
Sure.
you could come out through the ED, through the
Yes.
coke room.
I need to know more information.
Yeah, well, that's what I say, we need to
It
know.
needs to be researched.
That's
because
like-
Something doesn't
That's like the
sound right.
9-year-old being an interpreter. You
Yeah.
can't do that.
Right.
Maybe in a procedure, you can't do that.
Right, exactly.
I
Same
don't,
thing.
Yeah.
The same thing. We've had sometimes where we've had to literally call the ambulance that brings them down and makes them, so we can get scanned done.
Sure, I could see it if you
That
needed
makes
to
sense.
transport to Bakersfield. The request was get the ambulance to transport them from the ER to the CT scan.
That's what they said?
Yes.
I've not heard that. So
I've not heard that either.
No, we're not
Okay,
aware
we
of it,
will
but we'll-
find that out.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. And who would make that kind of decision? Oh, like,
My back hurts, so I could have made it.
I have been in other facilities where if you have somebody collapse in your parking lot, they don't allow the staff from ER to go out and put them on a gurney. They have to be picked up by an EMT.
there could be
and
some in the procedure that he read.
We'll find out. Mark and I will. look.
okay, it just seemed like a whole
I'll get back to you.
big lack of common sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you.
All right, we're going back to the position agreement. Gene motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second,
Yeah, I made the motion
yes.
with the,
We did
Correct.
change.
Yes, right.
Yes, right. Catherine, second. Mr. Blake? In favor? Yes, yeah. Go ahead.
Are we voting?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
yes,
Okay, so thank you, change this. All right. Okay, next one's for you, Mr. Parks, Mesa Clinical Pharmacy Building.
okay. Over years, we were going to look at putting a freestanding one in the middle of our 3 lots. Making a real pharmacy. Had drive-through, had appeal and everything. And you were going to get some figures on what it would cost. And things get by and go by and everything. That pharmacy of ours is a shit. It looks like shit. It's in Vietnam, the pharmacies look twice as good as that does. With the they used to call them connexes. Containers. And a mobile, have
Oh, but C-train?
30-year-old motor.
Yeah.
Mobile. That's been modified and jacked up and raised around. The cost of putting a real building there to give us an image couldn't be that great.
I don't remember agreeing to put a price to that particular.
It was probably 2 or 3 years ago, and things go by and, you get busy doing other.
I mean, we certainly can look into the cost per square foot of building a pharmacy building.
Even if you looked into a mobile pharmacy that you could sit in the ground on a frame and it wouldn't look mobile.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
A
I mean,
pit
that was-
set-
I don't disagree with you.
A pit set modular building.
Can I don't think your instincts are wrong. But we got so many irons in the fire. We're $10 million short on what we got in the bank to finish this project.
But
Can we
the-
put this on the back
The
burner until
world,
we?
the
no,
world can't stop.
Can we, Put this-
Everything can't stop for this damn,
can we put
Building
this on
thing
the
that's
back
never
burner at
gonna
least
happen.
until August to see if we get the FEMA grant? Because we're not have the money for this.
That's a whole 6 weeks from now.
yeah,
By the
okay.
time we have 2 more meetings,
you-
we're gonna know whether we
could-
have a FEMA grant.
That'd be awesome.
Could you at least put in the works, think about
Sure.
the modular?
Understood.
Yep.
Yeah, we can look into it.
The world can't stop because of our building plan, where we don't have the money.
It just doesn't need to be,
If we spend
Nice.
200 or 300 there,
it doesn't need to be the highest priority right now, in my mind.
it needs to be a priority. That building,
Maybe next year.
the master plan is not the priority for this hospital. We don't have the money.
Well,
That's the project.
they are,
We need to work on it,
they are all
but
priority.
we need to do everything.
Yeah.
Which the next
Yeah,
one,
because if we don't upgrade the building, then we close the hospital, and it all becomes a moot point.
but then do I go to the next one?
Go ahead, sir.
Well, can I ask something? So let's maybe put like a September, October, if you can have numbers for something like
Yeah,
that.
we-
Yeah, we can
Then
do that. That's
you'll know
good.
by August
Right.
you know, about the other things. So then you have a couple more months, then you can look at, you know, we'll know we're in a clearer area. So then it's not, I would say, you know,
Yeah, I'm not opposed to looking into it.
okay.
Yeah.
That way we just, you know, we'll expect it. And I'm sure we're gonna get the grant in August. That's, I just keep saying.
That'd be so cool.
So the minutes can reflect that staff is gonna report back on this in October or sooner.
I would think October, if you
Yeah,
guys agree to that, yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right.
Just think that's coming.
Okay. Gene,
Okay. And the other thing is the hospital foundation, what we're building up front, where we rent a tent for the health fair and for several things.
Yeah,
It could-
usually one rental and we cover 2 events.
Right, and it could be used for so much more. For the skilled nursing, for different things, for nurses and doctors to have different places where they don't have to come sit in here and maybe get some food out there. They could multi-purpose. They're not that much money.
I've put some thought into it. Okay, and this is the process that we would need to do. So we would need to pull a permit with Kern County. So it would require an architect, doesn't have to be Michael. It's not under OSHPD jurisdiction as long as it's 30 feet from the hospital's buildings. Okay. So we would have to permit the construction through Kern County, which is not a big deal. We would have the electrical to feed out to it, does come from an OSHPD building. So we would have to do a minor permit with OSHPD with an electrical engineer and a set of drawings of where we're gonna feed it from, so that they know that it's appropriately, has appropriate breaker size on a panel that can handle the load to bring out some power there, because we would want lights, we would want plugs for sound systems and, you know, whatever else we do at the events. Again, a minor amount of work. And then, but because it's also something that I can't just build because of the laws where we are at, that it would have to be bid out. And it would have to be at prevailing wage for the construction. So just as some rough guesses,
Okay,
okay, I'm thinking in the 130 to 150,000 range. The rough idea.
if you just call up and people that erect them themselves, you buy it and they come out and throw it up. Why would that need to be prevailing wage? You're buying.
Well, you're just talking about if you're putting a permanent structure up. Then you
Are
want something more than what
are you
everybody.
talking one of these little metal framed carports?
Not a little metal frame car, one that's substantial.
Yeah.
That could even have a face on it to look nice.
Yeah.
But still, yes.
Yeah. Well, again, we would have to probably get some professional costing on what that would be from, say, a firm that does that sort of thing. I mean, to me, it would be, okay, what do you want it to look like? So what materials do you want it made out of? I don't think we want it to look like a cheap carport.
No, we want it to.
So therefore, it needs to be, you know, a wooden structure, possibly. It might have a nice metal roof or something, but it would, you know, it would need to look good because it's right out in front of the hospital. So, yeah, I mean, you know,
I don't want to speak on behalf of Scott, but I can already hear Scott tell us flat out, you're trying to circumvent the system again. These are our rules.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I said it has to be,
Goes to
the
bid.
building code, yeah.
Right, it has to be building code and it more than likely has to be bid out.
Correct.
And if it exceeds the what, $25,000,
which have
then
to do with.
it's going to do, then it has to be prevailing wage. Right.
And are we talking like here in front of the lobby or down closer to the wall? I'm just kind of curious.
Down further close to the wall, where we set up the tent, say for the crab fest.
Okay,
Yes.
and so is there power down there from
No,
where the smokehouse used to be?
No.
Okay,
Smoke out, there's no power there. I've looked.
Oh, that old thing, yeah.
Yeah, they
There
used to be
there
a-
used to be a greenhouse there.
okay, well, there was a
It's
smokehouse that had
Yeah.
air conditioning, lighting,
Yep.
hall light,
Yeah,
the
and
whole
then
9
They
yards.
must have swung some power over to it somehow, but I don't
They
find
don't-
any sign of it today.
Hmm.
In fact, what I do for the events is I bring a power cord out of one of the patient rooms in acute care. And I bring another power cord out of physical therapy and I hang it through the trees to get out to the tent.
It seems like it came from where the light,
To the end, yeah, came out of the end,
yeah, so I think it was at the end of the
Right up
light
against the
coming up the
sidewalk.
steps.
and I'll go look.
Yeah, look, that's where I
Yeah,
remember it
no,
being.
yeah, you could be right, and I could have missed it. I'll go look and see
Yeah.
if there is a source
So I
of
just didn't
power that's
know.
already there.
But yeah, it ran air conditioning, lights.
Yeah, because my understanding, it
Smoke
was a very
alarm.
nice greenhouse.
Oh, I never seen the greenhouse there, but it was a
Well,
house.
it was a glass enclosure was out. I was.
Yeah.
It was metal, it was metal and glass.
Yeah. and
Sliding
that's before
door.
My time.
Yeah.
And my understanding is it is now on Red Farms over in
That's
South Lake.
Oh, well, maybe that's what they're
That's
using it for.
Yes.
But it was a smokehouse for the residents.
Yeah.
So they had to have a,
Building.
it was
Yeah.
a metal
And
building.
it had plexiglass on it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it wasn't they were smoking meat, they were just smoking.
No, they were smoking whatever they wanted. You know,
Yeah, but I will look and see if there is a source
Yeah.
of power. That being said, we have to verify, was it put under a permit and.
Yeah, I don't
And it's,
know that.
and it's a large enough service to serve what we would want.
yeah, probably
But all
not,
I'm
but
just saying is that's the basic steps of what we would need to
Right.
do
makes sense.
in order.
We want
to do
something
this.
that look nice, but doesn't have to be expensive.
Understood.
Okay, thank you, Becky.
Have you priced lumber today?
It's cheap now, it's gone down a
It's
lot.
gone down a lot. Yes. I-
We don't want
I
anything
agree.
copper,
Yeah.
right?
I always have a copper.
Copper-
We can get the copper gutter.
It's just a-
It's too expensive.
A mud
Nice
mule.
patina.
or-
Copper's down too.
Yeah, even if it's like an arbor,
Yeah, no,
that's really good,
yeah.
but I just was curious about I remember
Yeah, I
with
mean,
the
at
smokehouse.
my house, I did a wooden pergola, and it doesn't even have a
Right.
roof. But I have grown wisteria and grapevines on it, and so it's completely covered in shade. It's
perfect.
very, very nice, it's 10 degrees cooler under that.
I have
It's-
no doubt. Get enough power, we can throw some ceiling fans in there.
$5.
Okay,
To use the solar panels for the roof and then power it.
yes, and batteries.
Any questions, sir?
Yes.
No, I'm good.
Mr. Parks?
Nope.
Ms. Catherine?
No. I'm-
All right, guys. I guess, 2:16, we'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so
And but
Anything-
before we talk about too much, we need to end the meeting.
That's where I'm going.